From my bookshelf of ETpedia titles, this is ETpedia Exams. And I wrote this with Lewis Rogers because Lewis has a lot of experience teaching exams and exam preparation. He's written course books to help students prepare for exams like IELTS and TOEFL, things like that. And I've written exam course books for things like Cambridge First and Cambridge Business exams. So we put our heads together to create ETpedia Exams. Like all the ETpedia titles, it's a mixture of classroom activities, tips, ideas, and also in this ETpedia on exams, you also find sort of facts and information about exams. And actually one of the earliest units is not a list of ideas, but it's a list of 10 exam terms that often get used in exam literature. So words like item, key, rubric, options, close, multiple choice, lozenge, assessor, interlocutor, long turn, collaborative task. It's really interesting because exams use this kind of jargon. And if you're going to teach exam courses, students kind of need to know these words because they just come up when you're talking about the exam question. Another aspect of exam teaching is that students really get to know how the exam works. Now you could just give them a list of information and they could just go and read it. And in fact, at the back of ETpedia Exams is a whole kind of set of summary pages about different exams. We took a whole range of exams and we kind of summarise what you find on each exam. So students could look at a copy of that if they wanted a quick summary. But perhaps a more interactive, interesting way of doing it is you take a piece of text about the exam and then you make 2 copies of it. So you turn it into an information gap. So in the example here, student A has the length of the exam is missing in student A's text, but the length of the exam is there in student B's text. Or in student B's text, the number of marks is missing, but the number of marks is included in A's text. And basically the students have to create questions to complete their bit of text, like how long does the reading exam last? And then student B would say, well, it's 75 minutes. And student B would say, how many marks are there per part? And student A would say, oh, there's 15 marks per part. Now, it's a nice speaking activity. It's revising question forms, but it's a more memorable way of students learning the key information they need to know about each part of the exam. As you know from other ETpedia books, and perhaps you've been watching some of the videos that we've made about ETpedia because we're celebrating 10 years of it, we include quotes from different practitioners, different teachers, different writers and so on. And we always get really interesting little tips, and this one's I really like because I'd never come across it before. This is from Nick Thorner, who's an exam teacher and a course book author. And Nick's talking about reading speed on exams and how quickly students need to be able to read on certain types of exams. So he says, one way to increase students' reading speed is to mark every 10 lines of text. Then you ask the students to read and you say next every 30 seconds so that students realise how quickly they need to read 10 lines of text. So it's a great way to develop students' reading speed and get them well prepared so that they have enough time in the exam. And I kind of like it because when I've used it in class, it's really motivating for students. You're shouting next and the students think, okay, I've got to read the next 10 lines. So it's actually a kind of a really interesting classroom activity that you can try out. To finish off, it's really interesting when we get feedback from teachers who use ETpedia books, and sometimes it's the simplest kind of unit that gets some of the most positive feedback. So in the exam ETpedia, we've got a unit called 10 sets of questions that are often asked in exams. really simple unit where we've got 10 categories of topics that speaking examiners often ask students in exams, like you, your home, possessions, work, studies, hobbies, education, things like that. And then we've just provided 3 questions for each category. So if I look at people, I might have, tell me about a famous person you admire, um, tell me about someone you know well and can trust, describe a close friend or family member, or under education, what's your favourite subject? Do you prefer science subject or the arts? And teachers I've met, they keep a copy of this page so that if they're doing an exam preparation course, maybe they've got 5 minutes left at the end of the class, so they put students into pairs and say, remember, you've got to prepare for your speaking exam, take turns to ask each other questions from the page. Or even they get the 10 categories and the teacher says, can you write 2 more questions for each category that you think the examiner will ask you? Dead simple, but incredibly useful to just have to draw on in your exam courses. And because the hardest bit for students is obviously the unpredictable parts of the exam, but things like the opening questions of the speaking exam are actually fairly predictable. So the more you can help students with the predictable stuff and the rehearsal time, the better they can do. Why not take a look at ETpedia exams to help you with your exam classes?